Thank you again for joining us. This is our routine Monday briefing. It's been a busy couple days for sure. We've had a fair amount of weather going on. Some spots have seen a lot more rainfall than others, and we're going to kind of see the much of the same here for the next couple days. Anyway, let's dive into the details here. Show you what we're talking about. The upcoming weather pattern today through midweek is probably going to be the busiest period that we're looking for. And we'll go into detail on the next couple slides. But, if you recall what we saw over the weekend with showers and thunderstorms across the area, we're going to see, much of the same today and tomorrow. Tomorrow, we'll talk about this on the next couple slides. We will see some moisture associated with Tropical Storm Fred move into the area. But after that departs on Wednesday, we'll be back into a typical summer-like pattern with, isolated scattered showers and thunderstorms during the afternoon hours. I do want to point out tropical impacts are not anticipated this week, so we're not going to be looking at tropical storm winds or anything of that nature. But the tropics are certainly heating up, and that's what I'm going to show you on the next slide here. We've got a total of 3 systems that are out there brewing. Fred, which is just a few hours away from making landfall. We've also got Grace on the southern part of the map, and then we also have Tropical Depression 8, which has formed here within the past couple of hours. Let me step through each one of these individually so we can talk about some potential forecast tracks for all 3 of these in particular. Let's start with Fred because that's the one that's the most the closest to land and the most imminent to make landfall. This is the 11 a.m. update. This came out maybe about half an hour ago. It's still offshore, but it will be moving into Florida as kind of a strong tropical storm when it does make landfall. But you can see from the track that it's going to move almost due north, maybe a little bit northeast. And it will move through the mountains of North Carolina, but it's not going to be making a beeline for the central part of the state. I'll talk about the moisture associated with that here in a little bit, but in terms of direct impacts, we're going to miss out on this one, fortunately. Shifting gears here to Tropical Depression Grace. This is the 11 a.m. update. It is a depression at this point. It is forecast to get up to be a tropical storm. That's the thinking at this point, and it has it going almost due west into Mexico or perhaps far southern Texas. That storm as well, not forecast to impact central North Carolina. So more good news there. And then finally, we have Tropical Depression 8, which is forecast to become a tropical storm at some point. It's going to take the long way around Bermuda, and it'll still be out there, lingering by the time we get to the weekend. Current thinking at this point, we should also be clear of that storm as well. Although the cone is quite wide at that point, so keep track of how that may change in the next couple days. But by and large, we are avoiding the brunt of the impacts from all 3 of these tropical systems that are out there. I do want to shift gears and talk a little bit about precipitation. If you look at the forecasts that you see on the screen, specifically the top 3, we have the forecast for today, and that is reflective of some afternoon showers and thunderstorm, which are going to get going here pretty soon. Looking at the radar, we're already starting to see a little bit of stuff bubbling up out there. Tuesday, you can see some much higher values across the mountains of North Carolina. And you see a little bit of the blue shading, which is closer to 1 inch, coming into, the Triad and the far western part of our area that we're responsible for. And then you actually see some whites, which is almost no precipitation across, the eastern portion of the state. And that is where the moisture associated with Tropical Storm Fred is really going to bring the greatest impacts. So the western part of the state, is certainly going to see the best chance for some locally heavy rainfall. And then when you look at Wednesday and then really into the back half of the week into the weekend, you'll notice those rainfall totals that are on there are much, much, much lower. And that's indicative of a typical summer-like mid-August pattern where we get showers in the afternoon and they taper off during the evening. Now, looking at the excessive rainfall outlook from the Weather Prediction Center, you can see there is a slight risk across the mountains of North Carolina today. And then that slight risk expands across a good portion of central North Carolina on Tuesday. And by Wednesday, by the time the moisture associated with Tropical Storm Fred is exiting, you can see that threat really diminishes and is really just confined to the mountains. I do want to point out, though, the flooding potential, what you see on that map for Tuesday, a lot of that is contingent upon how many storms we end up getting in the next couple hours. So if we end up seeing quite a bit of rain across portions of the area, maybe the Triad, for example, they may end up being more susceptible to flooding during the day on Tuesday. So stay aware, keep in touch, and, keep an eye on the forecast for updates in the next day and a half or so, because, although our thinking at this point isn't that there's going to be widespread flooding, we'll see how today plays out and, adjust the forecast as needed. All that discussion was about heavy rainfall. Let's talk about severe weather for a little bit. Even though there will be some thunderstorms around the area, we are not expecting any sort of widespread severe, hazards or impacts or anything like that. So that's fortunately good news there. Jumping ahead a little bit, what is the distant future, 8 to 14 days out? The Climate Prediction Center slightly favoring above normal temperatures, and then kind of, equal chances for above or below or near normal precip by the time we get out to next week. All right, so summary: showers and thunderstorms today and Tuesday, very similar to what we saw over the weekend, but look for some higher rainfall totals and some precipitation chances on Tuesday as we get some moisture associated with Tropical Storm Fred moving into the western part of the state. Once we get through that, though, afternoon shower thunderstorm chances Wednesday onward, very typical for August. And despite the fact that we've got 3 tropical systems brewing out there right now, we're not expecting any direct impacts or direct hits or gusty winds or really anything of that nature. But I think, as we mentioned last week, we are approaching the climatological peak of the hurricane season. So even though we are dodging a couple of storms out there now, stay tuned, because things can certainly change this time of year.